Hi, I'm Scott Volpenheim, Director of Marketing at ERP Suites. I'm here with Mark Zink, and we're going to talk about analytics today.
Thanks, Scott. Look forward to the conversation.
So most businesses have data, all businesses have data. Mm-hmm. What are the common pitfalls or pain points that they're having with making the data actionable?
Okay, so if I think about where a lot of the organizations are today, and I'll give you some specifics a little later on, but I think what you'll hear in an organization is we've got tremendous amount of data silos, and I kind of gave you a little bit of that reference earlier. It's kind of in the hands of a few skilled technicians or a few skilled departments. Data traditionally it needs to be sped up and disseminated pretty quickly, but when data is kind of isolated in narrow channels, that doesn't necessarily become the case. There's too much, again, reliance on certain folks. So opening up that opportunity, or at least alleviating that pain point and getting data to the point where each individual department can make their contribution, that's key. The second pain point is data complexity and the volume. So we've been working with ERP Suite or with ERP packages for years. I've been working with ERP packages for several decades. And the reality of it is we have stored up a lot of transactional data. We've created a lot of volume. Mm-hmm. Transactions in and of themselves aren't terribly valuable. An individual record isn't. But when a transaction itself is rolled up by either by time, by day, by year, by quarter, or aggregated by customer, by count, by vendor, or by region, it starts to get far more interesting and far more valuable. We've never really had the ability per se in the last, up until fairly recently, to really take very large volumes of data, millions upon millions, and even more than that, of records, and efficiently analyze it. Nor have we been able to allow an individual, an analyst on a given team, to go through that many records. Now, most companies know that Excel has limitations on how many records you can bring in. Mm-hmm. That right there has been the inherited, stop sign for most organizations, or at least that's where they have to stop. So analyzing over 1 million or 2 or maybe 3 or even 10 or more records, millions of records, has been an impossible task. That's no longer really the issue any longer for a tool set. Lack of data governance. Again, back to the theme that we were talking about, which was years that we've created a lot of records, decades in many cases. We have been creating records that may have changed over the years. Businesses have changed. Business models have changed. Maybe at one point in your organization, you had a different distribution strategy than what you're at today. So when you kind of peer into the past and try to glean, if you will, bring that energy up from the data, as back to the oil reference, yeah, somebody's going to say our standards have changed. Maybe the attributes or the understandings of that data meant something different a decade ago than what it means today. So data governance and that ability to be able to identify those anomalies and those abilities to retrofit those to the current model, or for that matter, ignore them because maybe it was a business or a line of business that you were at before in the past, no longer in, to be able to separate that from where you're at today in your core business that you're trying to strategize and build some insights on. Being able to quickly get to the data that's relevant and be able to kind of do an ad hoc cleanup and governance, that's something that's pretty key. What you'll typically hear as a pain point is we don't have time to go back to all these years and try to retrofit what we are today back then. And that kind of makes sense. Probably the biggest indicator in organizations is slow decision making. Slow decision making is somewhat also pretty obvious when your key management is relying on intuition, gut feeling, and maybe decisions that they made yesterday. Or without maybe some visibility into what is reasonably projected into the future. So part of that is because management team makes a request. Scott comes to me and says, hey, can you analyze my strategic customers and tell me what region is the most profitable and what products are the most profitable? That request is a little bit more complex than one might think. And where that is self-evident is that exec or that member of management may have to wait a week to get that analysis.
Yeah.
And that analysis, by the time it gets to be delivered the week following or a few days following, that executive, that member of management has kind of lost faith in the process because he's realized somebody has spent an awful lot of time manipulating the data and defining that data in a way that he or she can consume. So I think the decision making, the ability to make snap, quick decisions, that's a good indication that a data strategy is almost necessary. And being able to get those analytics in the hands of executives so that they can make quick and reasoned rather than emotional decisions, right?
Yeah.
Or gut intuition.
Right.
So that's one. And I think the final one is really the lack of scale. That was the reason why I brought up earlier was the platform. When you've got a lot of disparate folks committed to different processes, committed to sometimes different sets of data, maybe the exact same set of data, but they interpret it a little bit different. So in the past, folks have spent an awful lot of time using a lot of very crude tools doing fairly sophisticated analysis. And what we really do need to bring to bear, or what needs to be brought to bear at this point, is a platform that brings that level of sophistication, that does not necessitate a whole bunch of retrofitting ERP-style reports, or for that matter, creating another data warehouse that may or may not kind of lost its content over the years, or its viability, or still needed to be nurtured. So what we're really looking for is a platform that like I mentioned earlier, that more people can contribute to, get more value out of, and also be able to kind of tie that into where everyone is reporting off the same set of information.
Yeah.
And from there, then I believe you do gain the most important thing, is to overcome the most difficult pain point, which is really rebuilding the confidence with management that they can make more empirical decisions rather than gut or instinct decisions.